Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of HiveMind's Creative Accountability Program. In this video, we'll be looking at the practice of setting micro goals for yourself relevant to your milestones to keep you engaged along the creative process. So we've talked a lot in our previous videos about the holistic process and what it takes to do the planning and how to get started towards your creative goals. We've also covered systems and strategies that you can use during your creative lulls or low output times to persist and be consistent throughout the process to reinvigorate your engagement. And now we're going to look at the practices that I think is critical throughout the whole process, and it's the micro rewards that we give ourselves along the way. Now, I think micro rewards are integral to maintaining a delayed gratification exercise, such as a creative project like the one you're engaged in. So we're going to look at today the ways that you can set your units of achievement, ways that you can break them into larger macro goals related to your project. Rewarding yourself is really a key practice when you're engaged in such a long-term gratification exercise like a creative project that you're completing right now. It's important to recognize what your units of achievement actually are, and that's related to our units of success or metrics of success that we've talked about in previous videos, related to your lifestyle circumstances, what you can actually achieve, and the rewards that are going to give you the most value and the most engagement with the positive energy and the recreation of that creative energy that you need to be engaged long term. It's incredibly important, again, that we affirm that we're keeping accurate record and account of our creative engagements and creative outputs, but focusing more on our creative engagements at this early stage. And that way we can really assess our units in terms of what's an achievable way for us to continually progress towards our completed project. Now, because this creative process is an independent one, it's reliant on you to set your own goals and rewards. And we're going to look at today the balance between those two. And we don't want to set goals that are too easy to achieve and reward ourselves too often or perhaps too grand. We want to find a good balance that keeps us achieving to be better and refining our ability, but also does give us some feedback affirmation that we're engaged in a positive process and that we're actually progressing towards our completed goal. And again, reaffirming this comes from tracking our engagements, tracking our outputs. So keeping those creative journals, even a creative checklist, some type of diary, is really important for a lot of the other content that we've talked about in these videos, but really to make sure that you're rewarding yourself where appropriate and not over rewarding yourself or under rewarding yourself, which can lead to those feelings of negativity and dropping off in that consistency. At HiveMind, we've already talked about how we break down the project into smaller, more achievable tasks. And we take that now into how we apply our rewards. So we look at this in four main distinct areas. The first being our overarching behaviors. Now, this is the practice of actually engaging with creativity, which is a huge push of what we're going for in this creative program. The practice of engagement should be recognized as an achievable unit of success. Is that just by engaging in the process, by sitting down and committing to your 15 minutes, you should be acknowledging and rewarding yourself over some period of time. We have the units of success or the units of achievement themselves. This is the smallest unit that you achieve when you sit down. We'll talk about it more as we go on, but it can be things like reading or speaking creatively or sitting down to write and getting to your 100, 250, whatever the output words is, that is relevant to your lifestyle circumstances, meaning the time available to you that you actually have to be creative. These units are grouped into our milestones, and if you remember from our earlier videos, our milestones are our lily pads from our A4 planning and how we get started with our basic dot points. So the milestones in our group of units really represent maybe chapters or half a book, part one if you're planning that way, but really significant chunks of content that progress you towards completing your project. So while completion of units are done on maybe a daily basis, the milestone is really your monthly, maybe 6 weekly or quarterly goal that you're aiming for, that is a significant chunk of your project. Now, this is where it's important to stress the relevance of being contextual to yourself, and only you will know the best breakdown of those units based on the milestones that you set from your basic plan. So once you have your lily pads marked out, you then have your milestones, and you can be more aware of how to break them down into your units to best progress. And finally, we have your project, which is your largest goal, and that could be completing a novel, completing a poetry collection, completing a memoir, but that's the large kind of one sentence goal that is broken down into milestones, that is broken down into units, and are all maintained with clarity, focus, and execution by your overarching behaviors, which are also being recorded and rewarded. It's really important that we do record our behaviors in this way to maintain that balance that I mentioned earlier. Is that the balance is important to keep us consistent, but also keep us real in our achievable goals and our rewards. We want to make sure that we're not over rewarding for underachieving. So once you've taken your project and you've broken it down into your milestones and you've allocated your units of achievement, which is what you're aiming to achieve every time you sit down to be creative. So once you've allocated your units of achievement, which should be a domino to your milestones to your project, you're now ready to tier your rewards, so to speak. So you want to be rewarding yourself proportionately to your achievement. If you're achieving a unit, you want to be making sure that you're not booking a trip to the Bahamas or an international round the world trip. You're just recognizing that you have achieved that consistency, that you have engaged. So it's important that we are inversely correlated with our reward and our achievement. I would not generally reward myself for practicing an overarching behavior for the first 6 months of that actual behavior, because what can happen is that we tend to take comfort in that reward, and we tend to justify within ourselves that we may not have to engage in the process as regularly because we have that positive affirmation within ourselves that we are already engaged in that, which may sound a bit contradictory, but it's my own practice anyway. And I find that it's really beneficial to, at the end of that 6 months, or if you're even feeling daring, not rewarding yourself for practicing an overarching behavior until you've done 365 days consistently, or sessions consistently. So if you miss a day, do 2 15-minute sessions on the next day. And when you've done that for 6 months, if you're feeling daring, again, go for 12 months consistently of a streak, then you reward that behavior establishment, because doing it 3 or 4 times isn't achieving that overarching behavior. You're just kind of sitting down and writing a few times, which I have fallen into the trap of before, and rewarding myself for just a couple of sessions, when realistically, knowing now, it's not doing much for establishing long-term consistent creative behaviors. Similarly, for units, you might look at the achievement of a collection of units as meaning that you achieve a particular luxury. And this is where you're able to come up with your own currency. So you've determined your own unit of achievement. That might be simply engaging in your 15 minutes. It might be 500 words a day. It is relevant to whatever you're able to achieve, or just beyond what you think you're able to achieve. So you're constantly striving for that growth and refinement. But in these units, you might agree that if you achieve 5 units, so let's run with the 15-minute sessions that we've talked about in previous videos. If you achieve 5 15-minute sessions in this week, on Friday night, I can go out with my friends. And really being strict to that, meaning that if you get 3 and it comes to be the Friday, that you're encouraged to engage in half an hour before you go out, and not to just kind of shrug it off as if, well, I'm going to go out anyway, because that is not very productive to your own affirmations of behavior, and you're letting yourself kind of get off without consequence for expectations that you've set for yourself. So they should be relatively achievable, and it develops this really negative loop of not even respecting yourself as your own authority, which in independent creativity is quite a dangerous seed to sow. And the achievement of units might be anything. So it could be taking an extra long bath, watching a few more episodes of Netflix into the night, or taking the half day at the end of a week. It could be anything you like, but after that big collection is that the feeling of achievement should be coming by engaging with these units that you're setting for yourself. But there should be that recognition if it's 14 days consistently, really making the reward a bit larger than if you were just I didn't want to be creative today, I engaged it in any way, so I'm going to watch extra Netflix tonight. Then your milestones. We talked about 4, 6, maybe a 12-week goal, but it's a really significant chunk of your project. Now for these ones, you could commit to taking your partner out for an expensive dinner, taking yourself out for an expensive dinner, but really making them a reward above the things we talked about before, which type of mundane recreation is just things you might already be doing anyway, but you would restrict from yourself and then let yourself to participate in. So the milestones are really that elevated event, that thing that you wouldn't normally do, but recognizes this significant progression and completion towards your overall project, because it is a long process. And even these 6, 8, 12-week milestones will stretch longer than you expect, and when you've completed them, there will be more chances or opportunities for review than you expected, and there'll be more work than you're anticipating. So it's incredibly important that we keep our energies high, our discipline refined, and that means we affirm to ourselves that we're on the right path with these positive rewards. And of course, we have the project. This is when you've completed all of those unforeseen circumstances. You've had the reviews thrown at you from left, right, and center, beyond even you asking for them. You've refined and edited and applied, and you've completed your project. And this is where you should really be having your goal set from the very beginning, is that when I complete my goal, my project, I will X, and have it something that you would otherwise not have brought into your life. And it might be an international trip around the world. It might be, I guess the clearest I can be is that whatever it is, it'll be so significant to your key values that you will feel a great sense of achievement and reward when you complete this project and claim that very high value reward for yourself. And it's extremely specific to yourself. It might be just getting 4 days of total isolation if you're at home with the kids all the time, and you've been pushing through the endurance to persist with creativity in that environment. You might just want total isolation and be quiet for 4 days. But the point that I really need to stress is that you're making it significantly valuable to you, because when you complete that project, there is very rarely ever a parade or a welcoming party or fireworks, and you have to make that within yourself, and you have to make that as the end goal for completing something so large, so significant, and such a huge sink of your time, to feel that closure and to really reward yourself for pushing it all that way. It's a remarkable achievement to make it there. It's also incredibly important through this process that we're being true to ourselves. And what I mean by that is setting realistic goals that we really should be pushing to achieve. Is that if we're setting goals that are too easy for ourselves and rewarding ourselves when we achieve those goals, we'll quickly slip into a habit of laziness where we're setting expectations for ourselves that we knowingly can achieve to keep ourselves in this feeling of comfort, and no growth ever comes from comfort. Realistically, if you're not attached to seeing that big green tick at the end of a week, I would encourage you to be aiming to pushing to achieve 90% of all of your goals. If you're doing this every week and you're comfortable to not formally be achieving your units, but you are realistically, you're achieving 90%, which of a goal that maybe is 120% beyond your capacity. So you're still pushing beyond what you would have achieved if you set yourself a 100% goal. That's kind of the idea, is we want to keep ourselves in a constant mode of growth. One thing we want to be very careful in this process is that we're setting goals that are realistic for ourselves, but just beyond our comfort zone, so to speak. And we want to make sure that while we can achieve them, that they are challenging to a degree. And it's a very difficult balance, because if we make the goals too difficult and we consistently don't make them or even come close, we again feed into that negative loop of, what am I doing? Am I even progressing? Should I be here? And some really negative things get thrown around in our mentality. When we're able to set our goals based on our recordings, again, extremely important that we're recording our outputs and engagements so we can see what is really achievable within our circumstances, and setting the goals based on those outputs, right? So we've had a few weeks now to really engage with that, and we should be able to have a very clear idea that if 500 words is achievable every session, every week, every month, and really be setting our goals based on those real outputs. But we also encourage you to just push them a little bit. If you were to set them and then encourage yourself to go beyond that, just to encourage that consistent growth and refinement of your ability. Aim to be achieving different units as well, and different focuses of those units, meaning that one week you might focus on time engaged with creativity, and the next week you might focus on output. But really manipulating or changing the focus of your units can alleviate the monotony of just sitting down to focus on writing every single week for many weeks. Whereas one week you might have an inspiration week where all you're doing that week is focusing on collecting the information. And that in itself is a reward for completing units of output. So we're looking at being creative with that and unique to ourselves. And it's really important that we're doing that with our units and milestones as well as it is with our rewards. And it's important for that because the feelings of our rewards should always be recreating that creative energy. We shouldn't be engaging in things that make us feel more tired at the end of them when they're meant to be luxury or leisure. We should be engaging in things that when we leave them, we feel literally recreated in our energy and ready to tackle what we really want to be doing, which is our creative project tomorrow, with a fresh head and a full bottle of energy. And this feeling of achievement, when you combine it with reward, no matter how small, as long as you're pushing yourself, when you're being true to that, will lead to this compounded effect. And you'll actually find that when you practice this over an extended period of time, it becomes easier and easier to achieve more and more. But when we set goals that are easily achievable, we see this loop of people falling into the reward cycle where they engage 15 minutes one day and give themselves a milestone reward that evening. This cycle really doesn't encourage discipline. It doesn't stimulate that motivation to be engaged in the consistency of creativity. I want to talk here about an article from Caitlin Woolley from Cornell University and Ayelet Fishback out of University of Chicago about the benefits of setting micro rewards for yourself when engaging in long-term gratification. The article summarized that people primarily who pursue long-term goals, such as exercising, to receive long-term delay results like improved health with exercising or your novel or creative project with engaging creativity. However, we find the presence of immediate rewards as a strong predictor for persistence. Specifically, immediate rewards that promoted enjoyment within the user predicted the current persistence in the New Year's resolutions, whereas delayed rewards did not. So people that delayed their gratification or delayed their rewards when engaging in New Year's resolutions were less likely to persist with it than those that rewarded themselves for those smaller units of achievement. Furthermore, immediate rewards predicted persistence in singular sessions of studying or exercising, whereas delayed rewards may motivate goal setting and the intentions to pursue longer-term goals. A meta-analysis of our studies found that immediate rewards are more strongly associated. So what Caitlin and Ayelet discovered is that people that engaged in micro rewards and actually taking compounded interest from their delayed gratification, is how we would say it, were more consistent and more likely to complete their project than those that put their head in the sand and tried to persist towards just completing that project goal. And we could see this as well with people that just persist with their milestone goal. And that's why we encourage at Hive Mind to engage even with your units of achievement, is that when you do that, just have that small reward. Take a long shower or a long bath, do something that relaxes you, go on an extra long walk, whatever it is. Will not be ringing true with the things I've just said, but you will know what it is, I promise you. And if you take the time to really do this introspection and set your rewards based on your units, milestones, and project that are related to you. If you don't like drinking, don't go out on Friday night. Don't have that as your reward. After spending all of your creative energy on investing into this project, if you then spend more energy on pretending to enjoy a social setting that isn't true to you, you will not have the positive feedback loop or energy to continue with your creativity in the next day. So we need to be not doing this all the time, not completely cutting yourself off from social circles, but just being true to yourself and being okay with if your activity that's more true to recreating your energy is staying at home and just binging Netflix or being isolated, that you have the confidence to take that measure because you've achieved all these things leading up to that point. Milestones should be achievable, but not easy. You should be pushing yourself to go beyond what you're able to do last week, last month, last year. You are setting your own goals here. You're setting your own expectations. And if you keep accurate records on your sessions, engagements, and outputs, you'll be able to be more refined in making these more effective, in setting the goals higher and further so that you are achieving more and more over a compounded period of time. It's extremely important to be kind to yourself in this process, is that in creativity, largely it's just you and the keyboard. And it's important that when you're being your own boss, you're being very kind. That's not necessarily to be nice to yourself and over rewarding and coddling or nurturing, but being kind to yourself and recognizing maybe when telling yourself you're too tired is just an excuse, or setting the bar too low is actually well below your standard and that you can go higher, you can push yourself further. This is within, and this is intrinsic, and something that you're going to have to develop within yourself if you don't already have at the moment, or you're looking to others to set these for you, is that the most effective way to set your units, to set your milestones towards your project, and to adequately have the inversely correlated reward for those units, milestones, and projects is to look within yourself. And if you're engaging in activities that aren't recreating your energy, to engage in this process, if your rewards aren't true to yourself, then you're not going to be experiencing the true potential of momentum that micro rewards can really offer to your creative journey.